Chapter 1. A Television Surprise. "Mother, come here, quick!" Ricky Hollister raced through the living room to the foot of the stairway. His freckled face was flushed with excitement, and his reddish hair was mussed, like most 7-year-old boys. "What's the matter?" came a sweet voice from the second floor. "Gram and Gramp are on television!" Ricky shouted. "Are you sure?" asked Mrs. Hollister, hurrying down the steps. She was a slender, youthful woman, with blonde hair and blue eyes, which were now wide with wonder. "Sure, I'm sure," Ricky said as he took her hand. "Hurry before it's all over." The boy pulled his mother toward the corner of the living room, where her 4 other children were gathered around the television set, watching a Saturday morning program. It was a motion picture of winter sports events in Canada, and at the moment a ski jumper was flying through the air. "He's flapping his arms like a bird's wings," giggled little Sue, who was 4. "Mother, you're too late," said Holly, a pert-looking 6-year-old with brown pigtails. She was lying on the floor, resting on her elbows. Beside her was dark-haired Sue, sitting cross-legged. She held a curly-headed doll in her lap. "My baby saw Gram and Gramp too," said Sue, making her doll's eyes blink. "We'll probably see them again," spoke up Pam Hollister, a pretty blonde girl of 10. She was seated on a hassock beside her brother Pete, a husky lad of 12 with a crew cut. Pete turned toward his mother. "I'll get a chair for you," he said politely, and dragged one nearer the screen. Mrs. Hollister sat down to watch the fascinating picture. "What were Gram and Gramp doing?" she asked. "They were watching a snowshoe race," Pete explained. "This film was taken at Froston last year during the Trappers' Carnival." "Look!" Ricky exclaimed. "There they are!" The faces of the spectators flashed onto the screen again. Among them were Gram and Gramp Hollister. Their faces showed so clearly that Sue hopped up to kiss them. "Hello, Gram! Hello, Gramp!" she said, holding a pudgy finger against the glass. "Please sit down, Sue," Ricky pleaded. "I can't see them." As the little girl dropped to the rug, her mother said, "Isn't this wonderful?" It almost seemed as if Gram and Gramp had heard her, for they turned to face the family, smiling directly at them. The children clapped gleefully. The elder Hollisters were young-looking grandparents, but what was more important, they looked as if they, too, were happy Hollisters, like their relatives in Shoreham. Gram, dressed in a fur coat, with a scarf over her hair, had a round face and eyes that sparkled with humor. Gramp, in a storm coat and a fur cap, was lean and rugged. He had a straight nose, and the corners of his mouth looked as if he were always about to burst into a big smile. "Oh, they're breathing out smoke," Holly said, startled. "That's only their breath," Ricky said with an air of authority. "It's awful cold at Froston." "I wish Daddy could see this," Mrs. Hollister said, as the scene changed to show a dog sled event. The announcer's voice told the television audience that this was an unusual race. "Watch the event closely," he suggested. "What lovely Eskimo dogs," Pam said admiringly, as the strong animals pulled the sleds into position. "They're not as nice as our Zip," Ricky said. "Here, Zip, where are you?" he called. But their pet collie was outdoors, frolicking, in the crisp November weather. The boy thought he might be chasing rabbits in the woods. "Well, Zip is the best dog in Shoreham," Pete agreed. "But crickets, aren't those huskies great?" "Now they're lining up for the race to start," Mrs. Hollister said, by this time as excited as her children. "There they go!" Pam cried out. "See them pull!" Straining at their harnesses, the dogs raced along, their plumed tails blowing in the wind. There were 5 teams in the race. Each sled was pulled by 4 dogs, one behind the other. There was one passenger and a driver who stood in the rear. The crowds cheered first for one team, then another. "What are we supposed to watch for, Mommy?" Sue asked when the teams were halfway around the race course. I don't know, dear, came the reply, but look carefully, perhaps there will be a surprise. As the dogs headed for the finish line, the Hollister children jumped up and down with excitement. One team, led by a beautiful big husky, was in the lead and rapidly pulling away from the others. Suddenly, the announcer's voice said, "The lead dog of this team is named Fluff. It looks as if her sled will be the winner." The children hitched closer to the television screen so they would not miss a single detail. Suddenly, Pam cried out, "Oh dear, something's happened!" And her brothers and sisters groaned. Fluff had stumbled and fallen head over heels in the snow. The other dogs in the team piled up behind her, and the sled veered off the course. "Poor Fluff is hurt," Holly cried. "The second sled is gaining," Pete said in despair. "Come on, Fluff, get up and win," Pam urged. But the lovely dog lay in the snow, while the second team raced across the finish line, the winner. "That's too bad," Mrs. Hollister told her disappointed children as the program ended and Pete turned the set off. "Yikes!" Ricky scrambled to his feet. "What made Fluff fall down?" "I wish the announcer had told us," Pam said with a downcast look. "The poor dog." "Since that movie was taken a year ago," Mrs. Hollister said, trying to cheer them up, "Fluff probably is all right by this time and racing again." "I hope so," Pam said with a sigh. She loved animals, especially Zip. Pam's gentle brown eyes suddenly brightened as she heard the frisky collie scratching at the kitchen door. Pete let him in. Zip trotted into the living room, smelling like the fresh outdoors and autumn leaves. Pam hugged him and said, "We saw Gram and Gramp on television. Do you remember them?" Zip gave 2 short barks, as if to answer yes, then settled down at the girl's feet. "Won't Gram and Gramp be thrilled that we saw the Trappers' Carnival?" Pam remarked. "I wish we could see them more often." Gram and Gramp, parents of Mr. Hollister, had moved to Canada after Gramp had retired from business in the United States. Now they operated a group of cabins known as Snowflake Camp. The place was very popular with winter vacationists, and Gram and Gramp enjoyed running it. "And I wish I could go see a Trappers' Carnival," Pete sighed. "Perhaps we shall," Mrs. Hollister said, rising and walking toward the kitchen. "Who would like to set the table while I prepare lunch? Daddy will be home from the store any minute." "I will," said Pam and Holly together. The older girl spread a checkered cloth on the dining room table, while her sister went to get the dishes. Their father usually came home at lunchtime from the trading post. Mr. Hollister had bought the hardware business the previous spring, so the family had moved to Shoreham. He had added toys and sporting goods, and the store soon became popular with people of all ages. "Here comes Dad now," Ricky called out. A station wagon was rolling into the driveway. It stopped in front of the garage, and a tall, good-looking man stepped out. Ricky opened the door for him and took his coat to hang in the closet. After Mr. Hollister had kissed his wife, the children flocked about him. They all talked at once, creating a good bit of confusion. "Daddy, we saw Gram and Gramp on television. May I have skis like the men in Froston? And snowshoes for me," cried Sue, who often mixed up her words. "Poor Fluff lost the race. We maybe go to Froston." Mr. Hollister grinned. "Wait a minute," he cried. "What's this all about? Gram and Gramp on television. Is that right, Elaine?" "It's true, John," his wife replied. "I wish you'd seen it." The children told him about the show. "They're television stars," Holly said proudly, "just like Fluff." "Fluff? What's Fluff? Sounds like a powder puff to me," her father said, his brown eyes twinkling. Holly giggled, then answered, "Fluff is a husky dog who lost the race because she fell down." At this moment, Mrs. Hollister rang a tinkling bell. To the children, the bell always seemed to say, "It's meal time." When they were seated and had been served, Talk once more centered around Frostin' and the Trappers' Carnival. "It would be so nice to visit Gram and Gramp for the carnival this year," Pam said dreamily. "Will it be given soon, Dad?" Pete asked. Mr. Hollister explained that the Trappers' Carnival was held each year on the weekend after Thanksgiving. In this way, the event attracted many visitors from the United States. "It marks the time when the trappers set off into the woods," he explained. "They go for the wild animals whose skins are used to keep people warm." "You mean like Mommy's fur coat?" Sue asked. "That's right," her father replied. "And up where the Huskies come from, people wear fur a good part of the year." Suddenly Ricky said, "Dad, you've been to Gram and Gramp's place. What's it like?" "Pretty exciting, son. In the winter, the snow is very deep. Sometimes the drifts get as high as the cabins and you have to shovel your way out. It's hard for the mailman to get around." "Does he use reindeer like Santa Claus?" Sue asked. "No, he uses a snowmobile. That's a car with skis on the front." "Oh, I want to see it," Holly cried. "And ride in it," Pete added. "Are there lots of wild animals up there, Dad?" Ricky asked. "Oh, yes. Deer, bears, wolves. The bears sleep all winter, of course, but the others are around." Pete asked if there were any huskies, and was told that none ran wild around Snowflake Camp. "I've heard that a few people have them for pets, though," Mr. Hollister explained. Suddenly, Holly broke into the conversation. "Daddy, it's not long to Thanksgiving. We have several days off from school. Can't we go to the Trappers' Carnival?" Mr. Hollister smiled. "Not enough time off, though. Snowflake Camp is a long way from here." Then, seeing the looks of disappointment on his children's faces, he relented a bit. "I suppose we might work it somehow," he said. Then he shook his head. "But come to think of it, there's one big drawback." "What's that?" the children chorused. "I recently had a letter from Gram," Mr. Hollister said. "Every single cabin has been taken for Thanksgiving weekend because of the Trappers' Carnival." Pam spoke up. "Surely Gram and Gramp wouldn't refuse to let us visit them. Daddy, please may I write and ask them?" Mr. Hollister smiled. "It won't do any harm to try," he said. "There might be a cancellation.